This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
You're listening to the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast. And now, here's your host, Lisa Rangel.
Welcome and hello. Welcome to the 34th episode of the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast. I'm Lisa Rangel, host of the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast and founder of Chameleon Resumes. We're an executive resume writing, LinkedIn profile development, and job search consultancy firm that helps executives and high potential leaders land their next role faster. And on today's podcast, we're going to discuss the one bold salary negotiating tactic only high achievers can use. So I know I have your interest. Many popular job search coaches give the executive salary negotiation advice to hold out and not say a pay range when asked. And while this is the preferred way to go, this is great in an ideal world. And in reality, it works occasionally. Except I can tell you firsthand as a recruiter, many executive candidates I interviewed for the 13 years that I recruited sometimes didn't move on to the next step when they didn't give me a salary range. And I'm going to explain why. Today, we're going to discuss how to get past the recruiter that won't move you forward without stating a range first, and explain this one bold salary negotiation tactic that high achievers can get away with using. So I want to give you some backdrop as to how this conversation would go between me as the recruiter and an executive candidate, and then we'll go into some tactics and strategies that you can use. So here's how that conversation would go. I'd be sitting with an executive job seeker and I would say, so what salary range are you seeking? And the executive job seeker would say, well, I'm sure you'll compensate in the right range for the talent that you want. I would often reply with something like, well, what is that salary range you're looking for? And the executive job seeker would reply, let's see where our conversation goes and we'll determine what's fair at the offer stage. Right? He wasn't going down without a fight. And then I would ask, can you give us an indication of what that number would be? And the executive job seeker would say, well, what's your budget? Kicking it back to me once again. And then I would explain and end with the repeated question. I don't go down without fighting either. I would say something such as this. So we expect to pay fairly for the most qualified talent. We don't want to move forward unless we at least know we're in the same ballpark, in the same range. So can you give us an indication of the salary ranges for the positions for which you're interviewing for? And the executive job seeker would continue to politely stall, saying something like, well, I prefer to keep chatting and learn more about the position before I disclose a number. And I would reply, I understand. I know that there are numbers that candidates will not go below no matter what, even if they knew more about the job. And then there's numbers that candidates would get excited about. Those are essentially the numbers that I'm looking for. Can you give me what those numbers would be? And the executive job seeker would reply again, I can appreciate that, but I prefer to keep chatting to learn more about the role. And then I would basically say, I understand. All right, let's continue. Now, the conversation like this back and forth, this volleying back and forth of who's going to say the number first, this can go on, right, if allowed. And as you saw in that sample conversation, which happened a lot, I didn't go down without a fight trying to get the number, and they didn't go down without a fight trying to not give me the number. But at this point in the conversation, after about 5, 6, 7 times of the volleying back and forth, I would continue the conversation. I'd keep moving it forward. However, I would ask other questions to see if the person had enough experience that I needed and enough proof of their viability as a candidate that would allow me to overcome their kind but yet seemingly red flag behavior of indicating decline of politely asked salary questions. So they're telling me no, they don't want to give me the number. They better have some stuff that I really, really need that's going to justify me as the recruiter to my hiring manager or my company client, depending on whether I'm an internal or external recruiter, why I'm willing to risk moving forward with somebody who's not giving me a range. So, but here's the thing. Most people didn't have the goods to continue to move forward. So when I started to see that it was really just a tactic to strong arm me and they really didn't have the relevant experience, I didn't give them a lot of leeway, and I would politely just sort of streamline the questioning to end the interview. So unless a candidate showed me that something was worth moving forward and taking that risk without knowing salary expectations, in many cases, the interview would end. You may be asking yourself, why? Why would you do that, Lisa? So here's the thing. As a third-party recruiter, and that's primarily my experience, although it's similar with corporate recruiters, as a third-party recruiter, I made my living presenting candidates to my client companies, the client companies who would pay me if someone was placed. And I wasn't going to be burned by someone saying, I wasn't going to be burned by a candidate saying that they were in the ballpark and going on faith, only to go through the whole entire interview process and get to the final interview, only to come in, or have that candidate come in with a range of what they were looking for, be completely out of whack with what their skills warranted and what the market paid for the position, even in some cases, even on the high side, and they were still above that. When this happens, and it did happen to me, it makes client companies really mad. And it happened to me, thankfully, early on in my recruiting career. And my client company was so angry at me for wasting their time and setting their search back weeks, because now they have to start over after falling in love with a candidate that they thought was awesome and who was totally not affordable and realistically even affordable, despite the candidate assuring me he was in the reasonable range. So, but then when we got down to it, the candidate wasn't even close and my client was really, really angry with me. So no recruiter, no third-party recruiter wants to risk a relationship that pays them over someone who's trying to postpone that question. So anyway, it's why recruiters press for the desired salary number. And it's important to know that mindset behind why they ask. And bottom line is some fellow job seekers ruined it for most candidates. But again, it doesn't mean all recruiters operate that way. And you need to be prepared for if they ask you early on, in the middle, or appropriately at the offer stage for your salary expectations. You need to be prepared for all of it. So if you get stuck with a recruiter who had been burned, like myself, and who really doesn't want to let you proceed without giving a salary expectation first, what is the one bold salary negotiating tactic you can use? And frankly, high achievers can use this. Be prepared. Here's the tactic. Be prepared to boldly state your high compensation range first. Come out of the gate with your high expectations, assuming you're above market. Now, by now, most savvy executives on either side of the recruiting desk know the age-old negotiating tactic of whoever says the first number typically loses. I don't necessarily believe that anymore. Sometimes that game is played in the interview game ad nauseum, as demonstrated in the above conversation example I gave you in the podcast episode. So, but unless an executive job seeker is prepared to be shown the door when pressed by some recruiters for a range, a salary range, I say be prepared with the range. If you're going to get shown the door, I'd rather get shown the door because I set a range that they can't afford and I know right from the get-go than be shown the door because I wouldn't say range. And if you have the achievements that they want, the relevant experience that they want, you have something that's really in demand and not commonly found within the marketplace, then I say it boldly, say it confidently, because if they're really impressed by you on paper and a little bit in person by the fact that they're asking this early, they don't know everything about you yet, they may be willing to talk further now that they at least know that you have high expectations. They're going to want to see, they're going to want to be curious as to what you would bring to the table that might justify that high number. So I say be prepared with a range versus only doing the deference of salary discussion. To me, this is not a tactic for the insecure or the bottom rung of performers. Bottom rung of performers can't say a really high number if they don't have the goods to back it up. So be prepared to boldly state your high compensation range first. Ask yourself, do you think you can pull this off? Do you have the achievements and the gravitas to pull this off? What does your gut tell you? If you don't feel prepared to do this on your own, but you know you have the achievements to back it up, then hire us for personalized guidance and we can train you on how to pull this off in an interview. You can go to pretendyourfiretoday.com/coaching and you can hire us to help you do this. If you know you can do this, now you know to just boldly state that high compensation range first. Get the number out there. Let them scramble to try to figure out why you're worth that, and then deliver to them the responsibilities, the achievements, the turnarounds that you've done, the really unique accomplishments that you bring to the table that they will see why you're worth that compensation. That's the key. And if you need help, you can go to pretendyourfiretoday.com/coaching. This way you don't have to do this alone and you can maximize your salary negotiation performance. The coaching resource, again, is pretendyourfiretoday.com/coaching. In past episodes, we talked about the only way to truly protect yourself from job loss is to pretend you're fired today and make a list of the activities you would do to start finding your next job. And then do these activities proactively to keep yourself in demand when you don't need a job. This is the key element in the Pretend You're Fired Today action list. Keep your network primed, keep it active, stay in the forefront of your network's mind. This way, you're creating demand for yourself consistently. We want you to be in demand when you need it, so you need to create demand before you need it. This way, if your job situation changes unexpectedly, you have already developed some pent-up demand for what you do by doing these actions and having these skills already under your belt. And for the next few episodes in the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast, we're going to continue to go through a list of tactics and activities that you can do now as if you were let go today to ensure that you are always ready for whatever the world brings your way. The first item on the Pretend You're Fired Today action list, again, is your resume. You want to get that modernized and up to speed. Go to episodes 1 through 8, and we show you how to do that there. And on the second item on the list was the LinkedIn profile. Get that modernized, up to speed, keyword optimized so people can find you. And I show you how to do that in episodes 9 through 12. And in the last 24 episodes or so, we've discussed numerous interview, job search, salary negotiation topics. And we're going to start to go into career management topics. So this way, since you're doing some of this before you need to, we want to make sure we're helping you do what you need to stay employed and continually rising in your career and engaged where you are. That's the goal. So you're going to want to revisit the past episodes and stay tuned for the future ones. I'm so proud of you for taking these steps and making yourself marketable when you don't need it. Most people wait and hope that things don't change, and then bam, like the unexpected job change happens, and they're trying to learn all this stuff under the pressure of trying to find the job right away. And it's hard. It's hard. I've seen people do it, and it's hard. So I say kudos to you for learning how to do this before you need it, because my friends saved me with their priceless advice of pretend you're fired today, make the list of activities you would do, and start doing them before you need them. She saved me with that advice. So I'm paying it forward with you. I ask you to pay this sentiment forward and share it with as many executives and rising professionals who you feel would benefit from this build it before you need it advice. Doing the preparation suggested in this episode will prepare you to interview and negotiate your own salary, whether it's on an interview or in a performance review, confidently. You will be confident. And in our next episode, we're going to discuss additional salary negotiation tactics that you can use not only on an interview, but in a performance review, or if you're negotiating for a promotion. So the key is I want to show you how you may not even have to change jobs. If you're happy, you may not even have to change companies to get a salary increase. So let's try to work with what we have before we move, right? So we're going to show you how to tackle some career management tactics that are going to be able to have you be making more money, be more happy, and content in the current job to even avoid needing to move in the first place. So you'll want to tune in for that next episode. Don't miss it. And in the interim, if you want personalized coaching for your career, any phase of your career, you can go to pretendyourfiretoday.com/coaching and hire us to help you directly. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Be well.
This is the podcastfactory.com.